I've got a tire up here. I'm changing the message. Oh, well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Let's try it again. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Hey, Carrie, thank you so much. I just thank you for that beautiful prayer. Carrie got pressed into duty. Normally, when Pastor Drake is here, then we finish up the song and I continue playing underneath while Pastor Drake comes up and does the prayer and goes into the message. But because I'm here this morning, we had to do something a little bit different. And so I asked Carrie to come up and pray. She said yes, she would do that. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you. That's teamwork right there. Teamwork. Matt doing Stump the Pastor. We have different people doing different things. That's what being a part of the kingdom is all about. Amen? Serving each other. What's that? Church family, you bet. All right. For those of you who don't know me, either here in the building or joining us on social media this morning, my name is John Waters. I am the lead pastor here at Elevating Life Church, and I am absolutely blessed to be able to come and speak to you here this morning. I look forward to these opportunities, and Drake and Sherry are gone this week doing their annual retreat. Every November, they go away for a week or so to plan for next year. You see, this ministry doesn't just happen. There's a lot of planning and forethought and vision that goes into Elevating Life Church and the ministry here. And that is what Pastor Drake and Sherry are doing this week, putting together the plan for next year, the message schedule, the vision, the direction that we're going. Let me say, Drake sent it to a few of us here this week. We got to take a look at it, and I'm extremely excited for 2022, and I hope you will be as well. Every year I think, how can we take this up another notch, and yet it seems to happen every time, so I'm excited for it. Now, with all of that being said, let me ask you, as Pastor Drake does every week, Elevating Life Church family, how are you doing? That's what that sounds like up here. That's cool. I like that. I like that a lot. Awesome. I just pray that we truly understand what we're saying when we say that. It's a fun little saying. But, think about it a little bit. Are you really hunky-dory, full of glory? Or are you just saying the words? So, anyway, that's not the message for today, but I wanted to throw that in there. All right, so let's get into it. This morning, we're going to look together at our core verse. It comes from the first chapter of the book of James in the New Testament. James is the half-brother of Jesus. They both have the same mother, Mary, but they have different fathers. James' father was Joseph. Jesus' father was, well, the Holy Spirit. So, but anyway, they have the same mother. So James is the half-brother of Jesus. And our core verse this morning is from the first chapter of James. It's verse 4, but I actually want to start a couple of verses ahead of that just to set some context. So we're going to start James chapter 1, verse 2. And we're in the New King James Version here for this particular passage because I like the way it reads. So here's what it says. My brethren. Okay, I got to stop there. Didn't get very far, did we? Who's he talking to? Brethren. He's talking to believers in Jesus Christ. He's not talking to his actual literal brothers in family. He's talking to you and I, believers in Jesus Christ. So understand that what we're about to read here applies to every one of us. Okay? Not just the people 2,000 years ago when James wrote this letter. It applies to you and me as well. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. What? So when things go bad, I should be counting it joy? Yeah. Why? Well, because knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. I'm going to change that word here this morning. I don't think it's going to change the meaning of the passage at all. I don't think it's going to change the context at all. I just want to use a different word here. I want to use the word understanding. So knowing that the testing of your faith produces understanding. Does that make sense? But let patience or understanding have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Wow, what a great passage. This morning I want to talk to you about one of the three absolute spiritual needs that each of us have. We talk about the UTI here at Elevating Life Church. It's not what you medical people might think it is. From a spiritual aspect, the UTI, it's just an easy way to remember. It stands for understanding, togetherness, and influence. Those are the three spiritual needs that we all desire. And we're going to talk about the first one this morning, understanding. So to begin, I want to tell you a little story that I ran across. Get the scene in your mind as I go through this. A farmer made a sign advertising some puppies that he had for sale. And as he's nailing the sign to a post in his yard, he felt a tug on his overalls. Well, he looked down and he saw this little boy who had a huge grin on his face and he was holding something in his hand. And the little boy said, "Mister, I want to buy one of your puppies." Well, the farmer replied, "Well, these puppies come from fine parents and they cost a great deal of money." Wait a minute. I'm channeling Andy Griffith right there, aren't I? Whoa. Okay. All right. Moving on. Well, the boy dropped his head for a moment and he looked back up at the farmer and he said, "I've got 39 cents. Is that enough to take a look?" The farmer said, "Well, sure." So he whistled and he called the mom dog, "Dolly, come here, Dolly." And out from the doghouse and down the ramp ran Dolly, followed by these 4 adorable little balls of fur. Got the picture in your mind? Yeah. And this little boy's eyes lit up with delight and glee. Then out from the doghouse came another little furry ball, a 5th one. But this one was quite a bit smaller than the other 4. And down the ramp, it slipped in a feeble attempt to catch up with the others. And it hobbled because this little puppy had been born with 2 badly deformed hind legs. Well, the little boy looked at that puppy and he said, "I want that puppy." And the farmer knelt down. He said, "Son, you don't want that puppy because he'll never be able to run and play like the other little dogs do." Well, the little boy reached down and he slowly pulled up one leg of his pants, revealing a steel brace attached to a specially made shoe. And he looked up at the farmer and he said, "Mister, I know I'll never be able to run with the other boys either, and that little puppy's going to need somebody who understands him." People, raise your hand if you're a people. Yeah. People, you and I are like that little puppy. Not the little boy, the little puppy. You see, you and I, each one of us, we need people to understand us for who and what we are. Now this year, 2021, we've been using a theme for our messages. It's your move, never stop playing. And we've been using board games to help light the candle each week. Well, this week's board game, as Carrie hinted at earlier, is the game Cranium. Who here, by show of hands, have ever played this game? There's a few, all right. I've never played it, never have. However, as I was doing some research into this game, it sounded very familiar because it's very similar to a number of other board games that I have played. Cranium bills itself, as you see here on the screen, as whole brain living. It's a whole brain game. It's a party game that borrows from a host of other popular party games of recent times, where players have to successfully complete activities in each of 4 sections to win. Now, those 4 sections are, and Matt, it is absolutely amazing how God works things out. I got to tell you this. Because, do you remember in Matt's Stump the Pastor message earlier, he was talking with the kids about the 4 faces of God, temperament? That's what this board game is about. Absolutely is. Because one of the sections is called Creative Cat. And in this, a player must clue a word to his or her teammates by drawing it, sculpting it in clay, or drawing it with his or her eyes closed. They have to really be in relationship with each other. Well, isn't that just like the face of man, the NF? For those of you that are kind of understand temperament a little bit. The second one is Data Head. This is a variety of trivia questions. I know more than you do. Isn't that kind of like the Eagle? The NT? Like Matt and I and Harvey? The third one is the Word Worm section. This is where players unscramble words, they spell challenging words, they guess definitions, they identify words with letters left out, or spell words backwards. They try to find that place where everything is right. Isn't that like the Ox, the SJ? And one more, Star Performer, where players must whistle a song or impersonate a celebrity or act out a clue. They're on stage, if you will. Isn't that the lion, the SP? See how the 4 faces line up there? I'll bet whoever put this game together never had that thought in mind. But isn't it amazing how the ways of God and how He designed things continue to permeate the world when people don't even realize it's happening? Isn't that amazing? Let's give a hand to God, huh? All right. I just thought that was interesting. Has nothing to do with the actual message. I just thought it was interesting. Now, Cranium has elements similar to a number of other board games you've maybe played, like Pictionary, Charades, Trivial Pursuit Genius Edition, Celebrities, Hugger Mugger, Claymania, etc. Some of those you may have heard of, some you may not have. But what intrigued me the most about this game is the whole brain aspect of it. It's not just using one part of your brain, it's attempting to help you exercise every part of your brain through its various challenges. Now, the idea of the game is to help your partner to gain a better grasp on what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're performing, etc., in order to be of like mind. In other words, to help them understand you and where you're coming from. But in order to truly be understood, we have to purposely understand others and how they think, feel, perform, etc. I want to get a little bit clinical on you here, if I can do that. Is that all right? I'm going to do it even if you say no, so go ahead and say yes. As I was studying for this message, I found a lot of different information about understanding and the brain and all that. And I found I want to paraphrase one research paper that I saw that I thought did a great job of really, from a clinical aspect, pointing out understanding. It said, and I'm paraphrasing here, true understanding is a clear, recognizable alignment between the sender of information and the receiver of that information. If you understand the message with the same perspective and meaning as the sender intended, then you have established true understanding. This demands intelligent effort, whole brain thinking. It also demands self-control. But please understand what this communication is not. This communication is not about agreeing with what that person is saying. It's not about disagreeing with what that person is saying. It's actively hearing the message in its original, pure, intended form without attaching your own thoughts or feelings to it. Therefore, true understanding is not easily accomplished because you have to purposely put aside your own perspectives and your own experience and your own opinions in order to tap into the real, actual meaning or intent, the opinions, etc. of that other person. And that is when you achieve true understanding. There's another word for that. Anybody want to take a shot at it? What that word is? Starts with an E. Empathy. Great job, Carrie. Empathy, absolutely. So what does that all mean? Well, it means that if I truly want to understand you, Doc, I have to purposely put away my own perspective and I have to put on your lenses to see it as you see it. Think about it. Isn't that exactly why Jesus came to earth? Isn't that exactly why Jesus came to earth? To put on human lenses? You see, God wanted to understand you so completely that He came in the flesh to experience life in exactly the same way we do. So that He, through His love and His care, His concern, His empathy for us, could show us the right path to follow to His goodness. We call them the wonderfully weird commands of Christ. Find them in the Gospels. But what happens all too often is that instead of attempting to truly understand someone else, we end up judging them because the way they think and they feel and they perform is different than the way I would do it. We fall into what Pastor Drake calls the BLM syndrome. That's the be like me syndrome. But what does God have to say about that? Let's go to Matthew 7:1. And it's going to come up the whole verse here, but I want to give you two words. Matthew 7:1. Jesus says, don't judge. Don't judge. Rather than judging the other person, seek to understand them. And please know this, understanding is a journey. It's not a destination. Unless you are God, let me tell you, you can never fully understand someone else because I promise you, you cannot see directly into their heart. However, if I want to understand that other person, I can do everything possible within my power to move forward in that direction of deeper understanding of them. But it takes self-control on my part. Know this as well, understanding is a two-way street. It goes both ways. As I seek to understand you, my desire is that you understand me as well. And as we both put effort into that, relationship and trust deepen to the point where we get to careless trust. How many of you have heard that term here at Elevating Life Church? Careless trust. What is careless trust? Careless trust is when I don't even have to think about whether I can trust you or not. I know that no matter what, you've got my back. You see, I can be careless in trusting you as opposed to being careful in placing trust in you because of your track record. you've proven to me that I can place careless trust in you. I don't have to be careful with my trust. Well, God completely and totally understands you better than you understand yourself, and He has the track record. Would you agree with that? Then there's a question that we each have to ask ourselves. Am I putting forth the effort to empathize with or understand as much as possible God? Let that sink in for a moment. Maybe here's a simpler way. Do I trust God? And before you answer that, think about it. Do you trust Him completely? Careless trust? Or only at certain times and in certain situations? Careful trust. Yeah, God, I'll trust you when it's convenient for me. Otherwise, I'll take care of things. Do you want to experience your life from His perfect perspective? From His goodness? What He wants for you? And what is it that He wants for you? Well, let's look at Jeremiah chapter 29, because He didn't leave us hanging. He told us. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Listen to this. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And let's go to verse 13, same chapter. You will seek me and you will find me when you seek me with all of your heart. There's another version that says, if you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me. Do you trust Him completely? The Apostle Paul talked about it in Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Let's look at that one. The book of Romans. Do not conform to the pattern of this world. In other words, don't do it the way the world tells you should do it, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. When you're building a relationship with someone, isn't one of the most important parts of building a relationship spending time together and getting to know each other, understanding each other? God says, don't conform to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renew your mind daily in prayer, in Bible reading, in study, in being with God's people. Transforming your mind. Then you will be able to see if you can trust God. It says you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Can you trust God? How do you know? By spending time with Him. By seeking to understand God from His perspective. You see, understanding requires connection, and it requires communication. Understanding requires time. It requires effort. Understanding requires putting the other person first. It requires that I step outside of my own perspective and experience and into your world for a moment. And most of all, understanding requires love. The kind of love that only comes through your own deep personal relationship with Jesus Christ. My hope today, people, is that each one of us is able to see that a vital part of loving God comes through loving His people. My prayer is that the message today is loud and clear, and that it will somehow inspire you to deepen your own relationships with the people that God has placed in your life. It's my desire that you receive the same in return from those around you. I started this morning with a story about a little boy. And I want to end with another story about another little boy. There's a 4-year-old boy, and he's sitting in the back seat of the car, and he's eating an apple. And in a little bit, he says, "Daddy, why is my apple turning brown?" And the dad answered him. He said, "Well, son, it's because after you ate the skin off, the meat of the apple came into contact with the air, which caused it to oxidize, thus changing the molecular structure and turning it into a different color." And there was a long pause. Then the son asked softly, "Daddy, are you talking to me?" Is that your question this morning? God, are you talking to me? If you're wondering if God understands you, if you're wondering if God is talking to you this morning about the importance of understanding each other, then I want you to please remember these words from Luke chapter 11 in verse 28. Blessed are those who hear the word of God and obey it. If you trust God, then don't just hear His words, the wonderfully weird commands of Christ, but obey them. Put your careless trust in God and His understanding of you, because He understands you better than you understand yourself. And with that, let me say, Elevating Life Church, it's your move.